a few moments and yeah, just sitting with our spine straight as usual, but also relaxed and comfortable. Just putting our attention on the inhalation and the exhalation of the breath. Trying to not follow any thoughts that arise, but just focusing on the sensation of the breath. And relaxing further and further with each exhalation. And then broadening our awareness, remembering the 7 billion other people on this planet. And the countless animals on land and at sea. And other types of beings. And see if you can connect at the heart level with their deepest wish to have happiness, to be safe, to be treated with respect and consideration. To be treated as if they matter. And how they don't want pain. They don't want to be dismissed or disrespected. They don't want to be sick. They don't want to be poor. They don't want to be hungry. And they don't want to be treated as if they don't matter. and yet pain and problems abound. Each and every being experiences unwanted circumstances, even unbearable pain. Without control. And see if we can develop a wish to be of benefit. See if we can develop a wish to further develop our own inner qualities, our wisdom, and our capacity and ability to benefit others in a greater way. And ultimately to achieve our highest potential, complete enlightenment, for the welfare of all sentient beings. This is Bodhicitta, the wish to attain complete enlightenment for the welfare of each and every sentient being. Okay, nice to see everybody. So did anybody have trouble hearing me during that meditation? My voice was pretty soft, but thanks to Lama Yeshe House, I have a new microphone.
It was great, Emily.
Yeah, even when you were soft, I could still hear you. You didn't cut out.
Excellent.
Like it all, it was perfect. Wonderful.
Thank you, Lama Yeshe House. Thank you.
Right, yeah.
Thank you, Emily's voice, for coming through clearly.
Yeah, it's quite a good microphone. So, you know, I did some research and this one came up highly rated. So I thought, well, yeah, a good microphone would probably work better.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm really glad. And if there are any continued sound problems, do interrupt me and let me know. But it seems like this is going to work out well. Yay! All right. So, okay, so welcome to class 2 on the subject of bodhicitta and mind training. Yeah, so bodhicitta, you know, just a reminder. So bodhicitta is the most expansive heart. It's the most compassionate heart, right? It is the pinnacle of the good heart. It's the pinnacle of compassion. You know, the compassion that, you know, kind of that can't bear the suffering of any sentient being. And it's an equal compassion for all. And it's even said that, the bodhisattva, or at least a Buddha, has so much compassion for each and every sentient being that, it's like a mother for her only child. That's how much love and compassion a Buddha is said to have for every sentient being. So that's pretty high. That seems to be, very far along. And maybe we don't feel like we're, we would ever be able to get there. But the thing is that, Buddhas and bodhisattvas, right? They were all just like us at some point in their lives. And they, through their practice and through their training over an extended period of time, they were able to develop this incredible level of bodhicitta, right? This compassionate heart that views all beings as at least as important as oneself, and even more important than oneself ultimately. Right, and that doesn't have that self-centered mind, or that preoccupation with me that is natural to sentient beings. Right, through training we can gradually reduce and ultimately eliminate it. Once we've realized emptiness directly, we can ultimately eliminate it. But in the meantime, we can certainly reduce our cherishing of oneself, or our self-centeredness, and increase the caring for others, without like neglecting oneself, in the sense of, without excluding oneself, right? Bodhicitta is actually the wish to attain complete enlightenment for each and every sentient being, including ourselves. So gradually we can train, step by step, to get closer and closer to that amazing mind, right, of bodhicitta. The amazing mind of enlightenment is what bodhicitta is called, right? Which brings, maybe counterintuitively, the mind of bodhicitta that cherishes others is even more important than oneself, is the greatest happiness that we can experience, right? It's the greatest happiness. It's said to be the greatest happiness, as well as it creates, right, bodhicitta creates the most merit, right? So as we progress along the spiritual path, we need a lot of merit, right? Our positive energy, or positive momentum to keep us going, and to help us develop realizations. And we also need to purify our minds, right? Our purify the selfishness, and purify the negativity, and purify the mental afflictions, right? Purify the unconstructive karma that we've created. Yeah, and so bodhicitta is also said to be the mind that purify, it purifies. It's the most powerful to purify our negativities. So bodhicitta is, is the highest happiness, and it's the mind that creates the most merit, as well as purifies, the most powerful purifier of our mind, right? Because as we discussed last week, right, the centerpiece, right, or the root cause of our pain and suffering and problems and difficulties, and it has its basis, it has its root in this preoccupation with me, this self-centeredness that's focused on me and my needs and my stuff and my family and my, my house and my, my viewpoint as being supreme. And then that induces the attachment to, that grasps to things and people and status and reputation as, as being, as bringing me happiness, and then the aversion toward those things that bring me pain or or block my happiness, right? And so that self preoccupation is the center of all of the suffering that we experience in samsara, all of our mental afflictions and all the negative karma we create, and then all of the suffering we experience. So since bodhicitta is turning that on its head and cherishing others as more than oneself, then it's very powerful for counteracting that root cause of suffering. So, so let's bring up the slides and go to slide number 2. So just a reminder, so bodhicitta is this compassionate wish to attain complete enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings. So it said that there's 2 aspirations with bodhicitta. There's the aspiration or the wish for complete enlightenment, and the aspiration or wish for the welfare of all sentient beings. So the wish for the welfare of all sentient beings, or the wish to free all sentient beings from suffering, the wish for all sentient beings to have happiness, that's the driving force or the primary of the 2 aspirations. And then the wish for complete enlightenment is how we get there. How do we benefit sentient beings? How do we benefit sentient beings in the most beneficial way, the most useful way, is through developing our own inner qualities, right? And freeing ourselves from samsara, freeing ourselves from the mental afflictions which hold us back from our highest happiness and our highest potential. Once we do that, then we can free all other beings. We can help free all beings from their suffering once and for all, right? Forever, not just on a temporary basis, but how do we free our dear brothers and sisters and parents and children from suffering forever? And we can do that only if we free ourselves, right? It's like if we're drowning, we can't help somebody else who's drowning. But if we're safely on the shore, we're much more capable of helping somebody who's drowning. Okay, and then the next slide is just a reminder. There's 2 main methods for developing bodhicitta: the 7-fold cause and effect, and the equalizing and exchanging self and others. And then there's a combined 11-point method, which is what we're going to focus on in this class. Okay, so we'll skip over to slide number 7. Yeah, so the combined 11-point method. So last time we began to cover equanimity. So equanimity is in this context is this even-mindedness toward all sentient beings, right? Rather than having a biased mind, having attachment toward our friends and our family, and aversion toward certain groups of people or certain individuals who have hurt us or harmed us or hurt someone we love. And then everybody else, right? The strangers or those that we have kind of neither attachment nor aversion toward, and generally more indifference toward, right? So normally we have these three different orientations toward these three different groups of beings. But equanimity is evening out the playing field, right? Evening out the foundation. Because ultimately bodhicitta is this, is an equal-hearted concern for every single sentient being, right? And so, so in order to have an equal-hearted sense of concern for all sentient being, right, we need to develop great compassion for all sentient beings equally. In order to develop great compassion for all sentient beings equally, we need to develop an affectionate love for all sentient beings equally. In order to develop that, we need to develop at least some level of equanimity and even-mindedness toward all beings. And that itself is a huge, right, accomplishment, right? It's just to reduce the attachment and reduce the aversion and have a more equal-minded sense toward all beings would be huge progress and hugely helpful for our society, right? If people didn't have, if people just didn't have hatred, that would be a huge progress for society, right? So equanimity in this case is ourselves developing equanimity. Just as an aside, so this word, this term equanimity is used in three different contexts. One is in the context that we're talking about, like in the four immeasurables, there's the, one of the immeasurables, may all sentient beings, right, abide in equanimity, free from hatred and attachment. That's the equanimity we're talking about. But rather than, wishing for all sentient beings to abide in equanimity, here in this case, we ourselves are, the focus is on we ourselves developing that equanimity, free from attachment and hatred, or at least reducing the attachment and hatred. Right, not, at this point, we're not uprooting the attachment and hatred, because uprooting it involves realizing emptiness. But here, at least, we're reducing it. The other uses of this word equanimity is, there's a presentation of three kinds of feelings: pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings, or equanimity. Sometimes it's translated as equanimity, and it's the same word for neutral feelings. So we're not talking about neutral feelings or equanimity feelings in this context. And then the third usage of the word equanimity in the Dharma is in the high levels of calm abiding meditation, when you've reached a high level and you don't want to apply the antidotes to laxity and excitement, and instead abide in equanimity. So just as an aside, just so you know that there are these three different uses of this term equanimity. Okay, so let's actually skip over to slide number 10. So last time, right, so there are these two methods for developing equanimity that are talked about in Lama Tsongkhapa's Lama Rim Chenmo, his great treatise. And actually he gets it from Kamalashila's Stages of Meditation. And so last time we talked about the first method, and we did a meditation on how all sentient beings from their side are equal in the sense of wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, right? So while we have these three different orientations toward these three types of beings, what we're encouraged to really look at why, why we have those three different orientations toward toward beings that are essentially the same, at the deepest level are the same, at their deepest longing is the same. So we're being challenged, logically. Does it make sense to be so biased toward these three categories of beings when they're essentially the same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering? So I think this reflection is very powerful, because when we dislike somebody, or when we have aversion to somebody, or when people have discrimination against certain groups of people, or when our country decides to bomb another country, first, in order to be able to harm others, or to be able to view others as being lesser and inferior and not deserving of equal treatment or fair treatment or kindness, it involves in our minds dehumanizing that being, right? Right, in order for us to kill an insect, right? It involves dehumanizing them and thinking of them as an object, right? As opposed to a living, feeling being that wants to be happy, that wants to be safe, that wants to be, to be treated in a respectful way, wants to be treated equally. So we dehumanize, we dehumanize the Iraqis before this country bombed them. They dehumanize, African Americans in order to enslave them, right? And dehumanize Native Americans in order to kill them, right? Or we dehumanize beings, when we mistreat them. Yeah. So just doing this reflection, reminding ourselves of at the feeling level, how they want to be happy and they don't want to suffer, how they want to be safe, how they want to be cared for, can be a huge shift in our minds. And it's a reflection that we need to do, repeatedly, again and again. It's not a reflection that we do once or twice or three times. It's a reflection that we do until we have an experience. And this is true with all of the reflections that we do in the Dharma, all of the topics in the Dharma. First, we reflect until we have a heartfelt experience of it, right? Until it's not just an intellectual understanding, it's not just in the head, but it's a heartfelt experience, like an aha. And then what we need to do is stabilize that experience, so it's not just a once in a while thing, but we have it, stable, until eventually it becomes a direct, spontaneous realization, right? So eventually where it's there all the time, that we don't have to make effort to remember, oh yeah, they want happiness and they don't want suffering, but it's there as our default, right? It's there all the time spontaneously. So to get to that point, we need to reflect again and again on this. And this is like we discussed last time, that this is something we can reflect on, right? When we're walking around, and when we're at the grocery store, and when we're driving in our cars. So we can reflect on it any time. It's very useful. I think the second, and I think that for most, yeah, anyway, it's hard for me to say, but I think for many of us, this first reflection is might be more powerful for us. The second reflection is a more traditional reflection on, okay, so from their side, they're equal, beings are equal in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And then from our side, the way Kamalashila puts it is, since beginningless time, every being has been close to me. Therefore, to whom should I have attachment? And to whom, there's a typo there, to whom should I have hatred? So this is tricky because this is based on at least an open-mindedness about beginningless lifetimes and beginningless rebirths, beginningless time and beginningless rebirths, right? So actually, before I even get there, the idea, and another way that this point is talked about in the Lamrim is the changeability or the changing nature of those three categories of beings, the changing nature of friends, enemies, and strangers, or friends, difficult beings, and strangers. How in our mind, they seem so fixed, right? That from their own side, they are my friend, right? They're intrinsically my friend. They're fixed as my friend. From their own side, they're the difficult person, or the person I have strong aversion toward. They are the quote unquote enemy, or difficult person, inherently from their own side, that's their characteristic, right, in them. And it's fixed that way. And then everybody else who we don't have a strong feeling for either way, they seem fixed as the stranger. But even within this life, we see that those relationships change. Right, my best friend from kindergarten, I don't even know anymore, right? Or the person who we loved the most, right? Our first love may have become our enemy, right? And strangers become friends all the time, and friends become strangers, strangers become friends, friends become enemies, and enemies, difficult people can even become friends. And even in the course of one day, right, with our loved ones, that we live with, especially, they can go back and forth from the person we love to, love and cherish so much, to the difficult person, and back again, right? So those categories aren't fixed at all. And then if we expand time, and if we consider, well, what if it's true that we've had previous lives? Trying to put aside for the time being, our resistance to the thought of previous lifetimes. So what if we have had previous lifetimes? What if we have had beginningless lifetimes? Then over that that huge expanse of time, then it's likely that that every being has been everything to us. Everyone's been our friend. Everyone's been our enemy, and everybody's been the stranger. So if that's the case, then does it make sense to cherish some and have aversion to others, or have hatred toward others? Yeah, and we'll take this further a little bit later in the class. So we're encouraged to reflect on this again and again. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama has a reflection that he encourages us to do with regard to if somebody harmed us last year and helped us this year, and another person helped us last year and harmed us this year, he asks, well, wouldn't they be the same? Right, but that's not the way we normally live, right? That's not the way we normally think about or orient ourselves toward others, right? The person who helped me most recently, they're my friend, even if they harmed me last year. The person who's been kind to me recently is my friend. But the person who helped me last year and has recently harmed me, well, they're they're the difficult person, right? They're the quote unquote enemy, right? But does that make sense from a logical standpoint? So we reflect again and again in this manner. And then on page slide number 12, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he says, when you contemplate this way in meditation, eventually you arrive at a point where a strong generation of desire or hatred appears to you to be just senseless. Gradually, such bias weakens, and you decide that one-sided classification of persons as friends and enemies has been a mistake. So he's bringing out this point that I find very interesting with regard to our feelings, our emotions, right? Our emotions do not tend to be logical, right? And when we look at it logically, right, and when we do this contemplation enough, right, eventually we reach a point of realizing it's just senseless to have such, to have strong attachment and strong aversion toward others. I mean, I love this quote. I thought, oh yeah, that's right. It doesn't really make sense to orient ourselves in that way. And then just in the previous slide, so just a reminder, we need to do these meditations and these reflections in a systematic way, right? Not reflecting on all sentient beings, and the amorphous mass of sentient beings that I was mentioning last week. But first, the recommended way, Lama Tsongkhapa recommends for us to, in the context of equanimity, to first reflect on the changing nature of the neutral beings, and then friends, then friends, then strangers, then all sentient beings, which I find interesting. I'm not sure that that's been my experience in meditation, especially with the first reflection of every sentient being that's been, wants happiness and not wanting suffering. I find that it's more powerful to start with friends and then neutral beings and then the enemies. And then the changing nature, I think it's true. Starting with neutral beings might be easier because we don't have strong attachment or aversion to neutral beings to start with. So it's easy to reduce the attachment and aversion toward them. But when it comes to friends, we have strong, right? Friends and loved ones, we have strong attachment. So that one's a little bit more embedded, right? The attachment is more embedded in our minds and in our psyches. So it'll take more time to reduce the attachment toward friends and then toward difficult people. Yeah. So we'll do that reflection at the end of class. And then, yeah. So are there any questions on equanimity or comments?
Yeah, Emily, this is Elaine. I noticed
Elaine.
in Lama Tsongkhapa's Orders of Contemplation, he doesn't have enemies.
Well, yeah, I mean, but this is, let me qualify. Yeah, I wasn't precise enough. So Lama Tsongkhapa's recommendation for how to do this, right? For us to do this, yeah. Lama Tsongkhapa himself, yeah, is probably beyond, right? Friends, enemies, strangers. But yeah, thank you for clarifying. So his recommendation for how we develop equanimity, or how sentient beings in general need to develop equanimity. This is what he's found to be helpful. I mean, another point I want to make is that we're not trying to eliminate, at this point, we're not trying to eliminate the categories of friends, enemies, and strangers. What we're trying to do is, because some people we're going to be close to more than others, right? We still have our family, we still have our friends, but the idea is to reduce the afflictions, right? The attachment and the aversion with regard to those beings.
Emily, this
Yeah,
is
so
Heather.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was something you said or it might have been something that Rabina said when she taught recently. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was in the context of Tonglen to start with yourself.
Mm.
So I don't know if that would be even adding a different, I don't know how that would fit or if it's in this part of what we're talking about, but I've been doing that and I've found it really illustrative, almost more than any of the other categories, to make it kind of real for me, because the sort of abstract other or specific other, I don't know. I can get in touch with it in a way that I've not been able to before by trying to do that with myself. Anyway.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. That is the recommendation for when you do the Tonglen practice.
Okay.
Yeah, and so with equanimity is different. Equanimity, right? Reducing our attachment and aversion toward others. We don't do that meditation with regard to ourselves. We do it with regard to others, and it's not it needs to not be an abstract reflection. In any of these meditations, we're meditating on specific groups of beings, and specific beings or groups of beings. We can think about, for example, when we do an equanimity toward a neutral beings, we can start with the people that we see in the grocery store again and again, that we don't know, that that we don't have a particular attachment or aversion toward. But with those individuals, thinking, okay, that person has been my dearest friend in the past. This person has been my enemy in the past. This person has not always been the stranger. And then with friends, taking your friends or your family and saying, well, this person, this person's been, this person, has been a stranger. Right? It's easy to see how, right, like your partner or your best friend at one point has been a stranger. And maybe at some point, you've had an argument and you've had a falling out, and and they've been our they've also been the enemy. So so taking specific individuals and just seeing how those categories have changed. You know, our orientation toward them has changed over time. And so kind of loosening up our kind of fixed, you know, the fixed grasp. This is my friend. This is, you know, this is the person, you know, that's always, you know, always, you know, going to be my friend, right? That creates a lot of suffering and a lot of grasping, right? And so kind of loosening our orientation and knowing, well, you know, those categories, they change. And that can bring fear in our minds. But that's okay. You know, it's okay. You know, some level of anxiety. Of course, a panic attack is not useful. If we're panicking, you know, when we're doing these meditations, then it's too much, right? But if we're just starting to feel uneasy when looking at these categories, that's a good sign, actually. That's a good sign that something's moving in our minds. So we can see, you know, the idea is to develop equanimity, right? To reduce the attachment and the aversion. And whatever method works for us is the method that we should use, right? I mean, we don't have to apply all of the different methods. What I'm doing is presenting you with the methods that are recommended in, you know, by Lama Tsongkhapa, but we can choose, and it's useful. It can be useful for the mind to use multiple methods as well, because it's getting at, you know, getting at these topics from different angles. Well, so yeah, I don't know if that made sense. Hopefully that made sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I experience a tremendous amount of discomfort with all of it. So I'm glad to hear that means I'm doing something right.
Yeah. Right, because we have discomfort because we have attachment and aversion, and we, you know, and to see that they're not the beings are not so fixed, you know, is working against our attachment and our aversion, and that is uncomfortable, right? Working against our mental afflictions is not a comfortable endeavor, but that's, yeah, but it's a good sign when, right? It's more, right? It's a good sign, right? If we're indifferent when we do these meditations, it's a sign that it's not working yet, right? It's not touching us yet. Oh. So also, I'm wondering what people think about just the concept of equanimity. Is that even something that is you regard as valuable? Something that you think is good to cultivate, or not so much?
I mean, for me, I find it very intuitive and inarguable. And I feel like on a certain level that's how I've been in touch with that my whole life. But it's like, I think it was in one of the books that you just recommended that I read, where they talk about, I'm not going to get this right, that you need the engine and the directions of where to put it, where to go, the wisdom and the compassion, that I have this really powerful engine that just sort of just flies around like a balloon that's being deflated in no, you know, not in a particularly good direction. So I do feel like this genuine wanting everybody to be happy. I feel frustrated when things are you know, I mean, my wisdom doesn't catch up to my wish to be good. And I feel like there's this sort of, if it's like an abstraction of society, if it's an abstraction of humanity, then it's easier. If it's, you know, it's Tuesday morning and I've just ended a relationship with somebody I care deeply about, and I don't know that I did it skillfully, you know, it's harder for me the closer and more practical and pragmatic it gets. So that's where, you know, but in terms of if it's useful, I mean, it's very obviously very useful.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, and you brought up a super important point in that, right? It's harder when it gets personal, right? And so that's why our reflection needs to be, right, on the cushion needs to be personal and not an abstraction, right? It needs to be personal. The people that we have difficulty with, right, doing the meditation with, right? The people, yeah, the very situations that we, that are challenging for us are the very situations we should be meditating on, and not like removing ourselves from the world and meditating on some abstractions. That's not going to help us in day-to-day life. We need to meditate on those very situations that are challenging for us, and that makes our meditation much more powerful and real and useful. Yeah. I'm just looking at the time, and yeah, and I haven't even started on some things I want to talk about. So I'm going to move on for now, and we'll see. We'll try to get back to questions at the end. So let's move on to the next step after equanimity. So yeah, one more slide. One more slide after that. Oh no, sorry, one more slide. Yeah, there we go. To affectionate love, attractive love or affectionate love. So here, right, so with equanimity, we're developing an even-mindedness toward sentient beings. And then the next step is to start developing positive feelings toward each and every sentient being. And so developing this attractive love or affectionate love. So the idea, so in the next slide, Lama Tsongkhapa says that if you think again and again about the suffering of a living being, this will generally give rise to the mere wish that it be free from suffering. However, for this mind to arise easily and for it to arise as very strong and stable, to start with, it must be a sentient being that has the aspect of being attractive and valuable. So this, so when we think about, or if we see someone suffering, naturally we, usually we have a wish, may they, oh, I wish that they were free from suffering, right? If we see a homeless person, right? Or, right, we hear about, right, people with leprosy or, starving or being oppressed in certain countries, being jailed, right? Like the protesters in Hong Kong, right? We have like a wish for them to be free from suffering. But if we want to develop a very strong and stable level of compassion, it needs to be a being that in our mind appears as attractive, right? That our mind, like that we feel affection toward or close to. Because in the next slide, Tsongkhapa says, for when someone close to us meets with suffering, we cannot bear it. And when our enemies meet with suffering, we enjoy it. And when someone who is neither a friend nor an enemy meets with suffering, mainly an indifference that neglects them arises. So, yeah, so here, right, if we take the current, right, crisis with COVID, COVID-19, if somebody close to us gets COVID, right? Like if I think about my mother getting COVID, like it feels unbearable, right? I mean, it just feels so painful. Whereas if it's someone we dislike or someone we think deserves it, right? If they get it, then we may have a certain sense of satisfaction when they get it. And then when someone who is neither a friend or an enemy gets it, right? When we see the numbers, right? When we see the right horrific numbers, right? We think, we have maybe a certain compassion for them, but it's not a compassion that is particularly strong or particularly, that stays with us, right? Or we may have a little bit of compassion, but then we forget about it very quickly. Yeah. And so this is very relevant now, right? So the idea is when we contemplate someone's suffering, right, depending on our orientation toward them, right, our compassion will vary, right? And we will only have really strong compassion for those that we really care about. Right? So this next step in developing bodhicitta is developing this sense of affection toward beings, toward all beings, right? A feeling of closeness, a feeling of caring, like a warm-heartedness toward all beings, right? And viewing them as being attractive, right? Because if we look in our minds at the beings that we really care about, right? We have an image in our minds of them as being, right? The image is very pleasing and attractive. Whereas for those people we dislike, or those beings, right, that we have aversion toward, like, that's very unattractive, right? Cockroaches are very unattractive in my mind, or the beings I have difficulty with, the people I have difficulty with, they appear as unattractive in our minds. And then everybody else, they don't appear as particularly attractive or unattractive in our minds. So the idea is to develop a sense of attractiveness and affection toward all beings, slowly. And I notice, I find this particular method really helpful in that, when I'm having a hard time feeling with somebody, or I'm having a hard time feeling compassion for them, right? My heart is not opening to them. I can check up in my mind. I can say, well, how are they appearing in my mind? Are they appearing as being pleasing and attractive? Do I have a sense of warmth toward them? If not, then this is the step that I try to work on, or I need to work on, developing this sense of an attractive or an affectionate love. Okay, so so we'll go to the next slide. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, in this regard, since the friend is attractive to our mind, the more we cherish them, the more their suffering will be unbearable to us, and the more compassion will rise for them. Yeah. So the more attractive they are, the more affectionate love we have towards someone. When they suffer, then the more compassion we'll have toward them. That's the idea. So in the next slide, so there are various ways we can develop, a sense of affection toward others. And this is just my list. This isn't, this isn't in a text anywhere. So one thing is I think that the reflection we already did on equanimity, on getting a sense of feeling for others, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, like feeling like, getting that feeling sense of them, and seeing their vulnerability, feeling their vulnerability, feeling, I think that in itself it starts to generate this of a sense of caring, a feeling of affection. Um, yeah, it's like if we encounter someone who normally seems so, so together and so confident, and then if we see like a vulnerability in them, that can bring a certain affection. So I think that's one way we can start feeling affection toward others, toward everyone. One of the recommendations is to see everyone as our brother or sister. So to see everyone our age as being our brother or our sister, seeing those who are, our parents' age as being like our parents, seeing young people as being like our children. So instead of having this kind of great divide with other beings, seeing, right, the grocery store worker as our sister, seeing the elderly person in the store as being like our parent or grandparent, right? Seeing the young children not as somebody else's child, but like as your child, right? I mean, in a healthy way. So breaking down that kind of objectifying others and the sense of distance toward others, but seeing them, walking around and trying to see them as our brothers and sisters, etc. That's another way that we can practice, that my Lama, Geshe Gyampo recommended. And then there's another reflection on the kindness of others, reflecting on, right, interdependence and the kindness of others, right? How, yeah, actually none of us are independent, self-sufficient people. We only came into this world because of right, our mother and father, right? We can only survive because of, right, all the efforts of so many others, right? The farmers who grow our food, and the truck drivers who transport our food, and the medical workers, the doctors, the nurses, and the technicians, the construction workers, right, the architects who, right, designed our homes, and the construction workers who built our homes, and those who laid the plumbing, and those who, right, laid the electrical lines, and, right, so many beings were involved in contributing to our comfort and our well-being. Right, our teachers growing up, are, right, those people who, sewed the cloth for our clothing, and for the sheets on our bed, and the blankets on our bed, and, right, it goes on and on and on. Infinitely how many beings have touched our lives and contributed to our lives, and that we may so easily forget about. And it's useful to imagine how much harder our life would be if we didn't have other beings, who built our homes and sewed our clothing and grew our food. How our life would be so different and so hard, and maybe it'd be impossible to survive, right? If nobody taught us how to read, and nobody taught us how to use a computer, and, right, and nobody, right, we didn't have schooling, so we wouldn't be able to do our job, and we wouldn't have a car, and we wouldn't have a computer, and we wouldn't right? We wouldn't have clothing, we wouldn't have a roof over our heads, we wouldn't have, you know, and if, right, and our friends who contribute so much to our happiness and our joy and our feeling of connection, right? If we didn't have any friends, right, how miserable our lives would be, how gray our lives would be. So reflecting on the kindness of others is a really good way to moisten our hearts, right? Because our hearts can so easily, right, build crust, you know, over our hearts, or our hearts can easily become hardened, right, in life, right? Little babies, right, are so open and so loving and so vulnerable. But as we go through life, right, as we get hurt, right, we develop a crust over our hearts, or as we get busy, our hearts, you know, our hearts are not touched, and so the closed heart can be, for many of us, it can be kind of our default mode. And so the idea is to gradually chip away at the crust around our hearts, and meditating, reflecting on the kindness of others is, I find, to be such a wonderful way to just have, you know, to soften the heart, to make the heart more tender, and affection, you know, a feeling of appreciation toward others, a feeling of warmth toward others. That's a really, really powerful method, I find. And then there's the traditional method. Yeah, we're almost out of time. So the traditional method of all sentient beings have been our mother. This one, yeah, this one is challenging for many people. And actually, since we're out of time, I think I'm going to have to push that to the next class, along with compassion in the next class. So, but what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, just spend a few minutes meditating on what we talked about today, meditating on equanimity and developing affectionate love. And if you need to go, then, you know, please feel free to go. But if you can stay from meditation, that would be wonderful, since that's the most important piece of this.
Emily, it's 10:15.
Isn't that when we stop class?
I thought we went to 10:45.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking that we started an hour and 15 minutes ago. Okay. So we have more time?
Mhm.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm confused. This one, okay. Do we have another half hour?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's
So
okay.
I'll go into the mother thing. So, so actually, before I do that, I'm curious as to do any of you have a strong resistance to the thought of past and future lives? That you want to admit to?
I don't know if it's a strong resistance as much as like a, well, maybe.
Okay, well, maybe is good.
Yeah, I think when I was reading the How to Enjoy Death book this week, and when Lama Zopa goes through the examples of people who remember their past lives, I do find I feel a little skepticism even in those stories.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a which is sort of challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's such a new concept for us, right? This is not the worldview that we grew up in. So just naturally, we would have skepticism about past and future lives. Okay, well, that's useful to hear. So I'll talk a little bit about, right, the Buddhist quote unquote proof for past and future lives, or the logic behind it. We'll call it the logic behind it, is that, so we sentient beings, right, we have a body and a mind, and the body, right, the body clearly came from, right, this moment of the body clearly came, right, as a continuation of the previous, right, from the previous moment of the body, which is a continuation from the previous moment of the body, like that. To, and then if we go back to, the womb and the moment of conception, right? So what's called the substantial cause of the body, right? Which is the main cause of the body, right? Then would be the substance that turns into the body, right? It would be the sperm and the egg, right? The sperm of our father and the egg of our mother, right? Our body came from the sperm and the egg. Yeah. So the substantial cause would be the substance that turns into the thing, like the clay pot. The substantial cause of the clay pot would be the clay, right? The clay that the potter formed to create the pot. So the substantial cause of the body is clear, right? The substantial cause of the body is the sperm and the egg from our father and mother. So the mind, the mind is, right, our experience of something, right? The mind is in Buddhism is not considered to be the brain, right? The brain is the physical basis for the mind to be able to function, for at least the gross minds to be able to function. But the mind, the experience of the object is something that's not physical, right? The experience of the object, some people call it an emerging property of the brain, right? But it's not the brain that's seeing, it's not the brain that's experiencing the sunset as being beautiful, right? It's a formless experience, right? It's an experience of it being beautiful, right? And a feeling of happiness. And right, the mind is the mental experience. To put it imprecisely, right? And as and for those people who attended, any of the Mahamudra classes, we start to get a sense of the mind as being something that's formless, that's, right, clear and knowing. It's not something that's physical, right? So the mind, this experience of things and our memories of things, right, is based, the gross levels is based on the brain, but it isn't the brain, right? And so, right, and if you see a brain in a jar, right, we don't, there's no mind in that brain, right? The mind is the ability to experience objects, it has the ability to experience objects. Right? The brain, right, the brain without the mind doesn't experience objects. So the mind is considered something clear and knowing and formless. So the current the current moment of mind comes from the previous moment of mind, which then comes from the previous moment of mind, which comes from the previous moment of mind, which comes from the previous moment of mind. So the substantial cause of the mind is a previous moment of mind. Yeah. So then if we go back, right, the substantial cause of the mind is not the body. It's not something physical. It's right, our ability to see something, right, or experience something or feel something now is dependent on our ability to see something, hear something, feel something in the previous moment, etc. So then we go back to the moment of conception. So conception, so when the sperm and the egg meet, and then the Buddhist view is that then the mind enters that sperm and that egg, right? So what is the cause of that first moment of mind, at the time of conception, right? So the Buddhist view would be that it would be the cause of that first moment of mind is a previous moment of mind, right? It's not the sperm and the egg that is the moment, it is the cause of that first level of mind. Because the idea is that things give rise to something of a similar type, right? Like a physical thing gives rise to another physical thing, right? Like the body, one moment of the body gives rise to another moment of body, right? The clay, gives rise to the clay pot, right? The clay doesn't give rise to a moment of mind, right? The body doesn't give rise to a moment of mind, the mind being non-physical. So only only something non-physical can give rise to something non-physical is the idea. And so only a previous moment of mind can give rise to the current moment of mind, right? So the moment of mind at the moment of conception can only come from a previous moment of mind, right? And ad infinitum, and that moment of mind gives rise to, came from a previous moment of mind, which came from a previous moment of mind, which came from a previous moment of mind, which came from a previous moment of mind, and on forever, because, right, nothing arises, right? Things don't arise from nothing, right? Like matter cannot be created nor destroyed, right? Right? Things don't arise from nothing. Things don't just appear out of nothing, right? There needs to be a previous cause, and so that's the reasoning behind beginningless lifetimes, because right, a moment of mind always came from a previous moment of mind, which came from a previous moment of mind, which came from a previous moment of mind. And a moment of mind can't have come from nothing. Yeah. So that's the idea. And it's something, of course, that we need to reflect on. And, I'm not saying that we should accept it. But to reflect on that. So based on that reasoning, we can posit beginningless lifetimes. Yeah. So, or at least we can entertain the possibility of previous lifetimes. And if we're willing to entertain the possibility of beginningless lifetimes, then if we have had beginningless lifetimes, that means, right, right, in each of those lifetimes, or at least in each of those lifetimes as a mammal, we had a mother and we had a father, right? And if we think about them, it's pretty mind-blowing. If we think about that if we've had mothers and fathers in beginningless lifetimes, in countless lifetimes, that means that we've had countless parents. And if we've had countless parents, then where are they now? Right? We've had countless parents who took care of us when we couldn't take care of ourselves. You know, when we were too small to feed ourselves, when we were too, right, we weren't able to walk or talk, we couldn't bathe ourselves, we couldn't do anything for ourselves. And if no one took care of us, we would have died. So the traditional method of developing attractive or affectionate love is in the next, I think it's the next slide, regarding viewing all sentient beings as your mother. So this meditation works if we have a decent relationship with our mother, right? If we don't, if we've had an abusive mother, or a lot of difficulties with our mother, this may not be the person, to utilize in this particular meditation. So the idea is to choose someone, someone that we easily, like our hearts easily open up to. It might be our best friend, it might be our father or a grandparent or a kind aunt. So considering beginningless lifetimes and considering in each and every life we've had someone who deeply cared about us, who put our needs in front of their own. So the idea here to develop affectionate love traditionally is to view all sentient beings as our mother, remembering her kindness and then wishing to repay her kindness. So if it's your mother or your father or your grandparent, or a mentor, choosing that person and doing these 3 steps. So this particular meditation, I think a lot of people have resistance toward, and a lot of Dharma teachers don't even teach this. And I personally find it very, very useful and powerful meditation if we do it again and again, if we're willing to do it again and again. I think that this particular meditation is the one that that allowed the monks in Tibet who were imprisoned after the Chinese communist government took over and imprisoned them and tortured them, and it allowed them to keep their compassion for their abusers. I think only a huge, right, a very, very deep, powerful level of affectionate love can allow somebody to maintain compassion in the direst of circumstances. And my personal belief is it's this particular meditation that can bring that about obviously over with a lot of effort over a long period of time. And I've told this story, many times of, when I was in retreat. Yeah, when I was in long retreat after I finished the master's program, we were supposed to do a 9-month retreat. So I spent many months doing this particular meditation. This particular meditation was one of my most, the meditation I focused on the most. And it was transformative. And to do it day after day. So viewing all sentient beings as our mother, and then remembering the kindness, right? That remembering the kindness of our mother is super powerful, because it's like it's very, I think it's human nature to appreciate, right? To really appreciate someone who has helped us once, right? Or once in a while, the person who took us to the doctor's office when we didn't feel well enough to go on our own, or the person who lent us money when we were in dire straits, the person who listened to us when we were depressed or feeling down. But the people who help us day after day after day after day, year after year after year after year, I think it's human nature to not have as much appreciation for them, to take them more, their kindness more for granted. And our parents, being the most common example, but like our parents, our mothers, our fathers, right? They put our needs ahead of theirs more than anyone. Yeah, for the typical, at least for the typical mother, who worried about us, who lost sleep over us, who exhausted herself for us, who would, glue her ears to the sounds in our room when we were babies, listening for our cries, getting up in the middle of the night and picking us up and feeding us and rocking us, and until we went back to sleep, who may have walked around with us for hours in the middle of the night when we were crying, who changed our diapers and bathed us, and worked hard, maybe in a job that they didn't like, in order to find security for us, who put off their own dreams and their own needs to take care of us, who sacrificed for us, who gave up their own material security, for us, because we were, raising a child is just a huge expense, right? Who, let go of doing many things that they want for us, because children take up so much time, right? And energy, right? I like, yeah. So contemplating the kindness of our mothers, kind of slowly and carefully. The Dalai Lama says, we have to contemplate their kindness slowly and carefully, and not superficially, and let it really penetrate our consciousness, really penetrate our being, and it sink in. And in my experience with this meditation, it does is it, right? It's like vinegar eating at the mineral deposits, right? Like slowly eating away at the mineral deposits. And with remembering the kindness, when it slowly eats, it slowly dissolves the crust around our hearts, to the point where, eventually it touches us deeply, deeply, and to the point where, we just might break down, crying and even sobbing, thinking about the kindness of our parents. Sorry. So this is a very, very useful meditation to do in order to develop the affectionate love. And then naturally, right? Naturally, when we feel really grateful to somebody who has helped us, right? Then naturally we want to repay their kindness, right? Naturally we want to do something for them, give them a gift or help them. And so that's the third step in developing affectionate love in the traditional way is think about, wanting to wishing to repay the kindness, and then the more we understand the nature of samsara and the painful nature of samsara and the endless nature of samsara, that the more we wish to help to free others from from samsara, because we want to free our mothers from suffering forever, right? We don't, it's not. Yes, the wishing to repay the kindness also includes, temporary, helping them out when they need help. And ultimately the bodhisattva is wishing to bring others to enlightenment, right? So doing these three contemplations of, contemplating the possibility of of countless lives, and that we've had countless mothers, and so then it's possible, isn't it possible, that each and every being has been our mother or our father or a dear friend, right? Just considering that possibility, considering the possibility of, for each of the three categories of beings, right? Considering the possibility of each of our friends having been our mother, each of our family members as having been our mother, or whoever is the dear one to us. Contemplating the possibility that the grocery store clerk could have been our mother, or the gas station attendant could have been our mother, or the person in the car next to us could have been our mother, or the person in line next to us could have been our mother, right? Our coworkers could have been our mother. Our boss could have been our mother. Our doctor could have been our mother, right? That homeless person on the street could have been our mother. The ant, the cockroach could have been our mother, right? And so, the traditional way is to contemplate to the point where you become convinced that everyone's been your mother, which is hard. And our logical mind might kick in and resistance might kick in, right? But the idea is for this to be a mind training technique, right? A way to soften our hearts, a way to bring warmth and affection in our hearts toward each and every sentient being, right? So to not get caught in the logic of it. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama's recommendation is to view, right? Like if you can't get, if you can't, or you have resistance to seeing, to becoming certain that all sentient beings have been your mother, then to reflect on whether we can be certain that any particular individual has never been our mother, right? Or has never been our best friend, or has never been our aunt, our kind aunt or mentor, right? And the idea is that none of us can be absolutely certain that any given being has not been kind to us, has not been good to us, has not been our best friend, has not been our parent, has not been our mother, has not been our grandfather, right? We can't know for sure. And I find this contemplation useful, like in the context of my father, who I was very, very close to, who was very, very dear to me, who passed away, 14 years ago. And like just considering, well, where is he now, right? The bird that just landed on the step next to me. Like just even considering, well, is that my father? Like changes your whole orientation toward that person, right? Or I used to do this contemplation a lot when I was in the line with the grocery store and thinking about, right, the grocery store, the checkout clerk, and thinking about, oh, that person, that could be my father, that person could have been my mother. And it was just a really moving meditation for me. And so by the time I get up to the front of the line, I would have all of this, warmth and toward the grocery store clerk, which sometimes, would take them aback. But it's just a wonderful, beautiful exercise. Yeah. So we do this, toward the three types of beings, the groups, and individuals within each group. So we start with our friends, and then we move, and once we have, some success with our friends, then we move to the neutral beings, the store clerks, etc. And then we move toward the difficult beings, and these can be the individuals, as we've talked about, as well as the groups, like Jackie brought up, right, New Yorkers last time, right? If we have all right, just notice in our minds what, which groups, which categories, which labels of people or beings that we have a particular hard time with, if it's, New Yorkers, if it's, racists, if it's, right, Republicans or Democrats, or if it's white supremacists, or if it's, yeah, or if it's, certain categories of insects, right, or animals, spiders, snakes, right? Just notice those and then work on them. Do this meditation with regard to them. And the thing is that it's hard, and the idea is to do it over a period of time. And Geshe Sopa says that it's hardest at the beginning, right? It's hardest in the beginning because we have right? We have strong habits in the other direction, right? We have deeply ingrained patterns going in the other direction, right? Toward, aversion and attachment, etc. And so in the beginning is the hardest, but then it becomes easier. And I liken this to, right, if we're, let's say, going to train for a marathon and we haven't exercised for 3 years, right? And then we start running, right? In the beginning, it's so hard, right? It's so painful because we haven't been exercising, we haven't been running. But over time, it gets easier, right? To the point where eventually running becomes, very easy, very pleasant for some people. And it's similar with these kinds of meditations. It's really hard and we may have a lot of resistance in the beginning. But then as we continue to do these reflections, it really brings, so much, so much happiness to our minds. It brings, right? It brings so much warmth to our hearts. And yeah, and then once we start to experience, right, the benefits of these meditations, then we want to do them more. Yeah. So it's not always going to be hard. So that's the idea. Let's do, oh gosh, I've gone over, and I wasn't watching the time. I'm sorry. Well, if people can stay for a few minutes, let's do the meditation. Well, actually, let me ask you, we could just save the meditation for the beginning of class next time, or I can just introduce you to the meditations now, briefly, and ask you to do the meditations this week. So
That sounds good to me.
okay, so
That sounds great.
Okay. Yeah, well, let's do that. Let's do at least a brief version of the meditation now. And then people who need to leave, feel free to leave, and then we'll, yeah. And then we can do maybe a longer version next time. So, yeah. It seems that I go overtime no matter what. I'm sorry.
But we've heard every single word, so it's amazing.
Yes, I'm sorry I didn't get a microphone before. Oh my gosh, it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, good. So let's sit in our meditation posture again. Relaxing and yet staying alert. And putting our attention on the breath. And actually, I'm just going to do a meditation on the kindness for now. So let's view the three different categories of beings in front of us. And the beings, the people and beings that are within those categories. Yeah, and so then consider the possibility of us having had 100 previous lifetimes. And 100 different mothers or fathers or whoever you feel particularly close with. And consider if we've had 1,000 previous lifetimes and 1,000 different mothers and fathers and best friends and kind grandparents. Or 1,000,000 and 1,000,000 different lifetimes and parents and best friends. And then 1,000,000,000, trying to imagine 1,000,000,000 1,000,000,000,000 and then infinite. So if we've had an infinite number of lifetimes, then we've had an infinite number of mothers and fathers, aunts and grandparents, uncles, best friends. So isn't it possible that everyone in your life, everyone walking around on this planet has been our dear mother or father or grandparent or best friend? Is that possible? Is it possible that everyone even in the difficult person category has been our dear mother or father, our dear grandparent, aunt or uncle, best friend? And we may notice resistance, which is normal, but just consider whether it's possible. Is it possible that each and every one of those beings has taken care of us when we were unable to take care of ourselves? Who fed us and bathed us and rocked us as babies? Who taught us how to walk and talk? Who worried about us? Who sacrificed for us? Who put our needs ahead of their own? Who exhausted themselves in taking care of us? Who put up with our teenage years? So considering beings in each of those categories. We don't have time to do it right now, but in your meditation this week, seeing if you can do this reflection on each of the categories individually, in each and individual beings in those categories. Consider whether it's possible, or what if this person, this person in front of me, or the person that bugs me the most, is it possible that they were my dearest parent? Or dearest friend? So meditating like that, and then contemplating the kindness over and over again, making it personal. Right? Something, that your mother actually did, or the things that she actually did, right, for you, that touches you. Baking cookies for you, or making your favorite meals, or making soup and taking care of us when we were sick. Right? Or listening to us, listening to our dreams, or listening to us when we came home from school upset, or we had a heartbreak. So contemplating again and again her kindness. or the kindness of the being you choose, the dear person you choose. And then thinking, being filled with, eventually being filled with gratitude and filled with warmth, and wishing to repay that kindness. Like there's a reflection that a Japanese businessman encouraged people to do, and ask ourselves three questions, if I can find them. The first one is, what have I received from this person? And then the second one, what have I given to this person? And the third, what troubles and difficulties have I caused to this person? And so thereby, trying to develop a genuine wish to repay the kindness of our mother, our father, our grandparents, etc. Okay, then we'll dedicate any positive energy or merit we've created. May all beings have happiness and peace of mind. May all beings be safe and healthy and well. May I attain my fullest potential. May I continue to progress along this path and expand my heart further and further. In order to bring more health, a peace, a healthy mind, and wellness into the world. And lead all beings to a state beyond suffering. And then finally, let's dedicate for this pandemic to be quickly brought under control, people, for everyone to be careful and considerate of others. For the actions that are needed to actually be taken. Yeah, and for us all to stay healthy. Okay, so yeah, so wishing everybody a happy and safe Thanksgiving. We don't have class next week because of the Thanksgiving holiday, so we'll have class in 2 weeks. So hopefully you'll have a chance to do, these reflections, or at least one of these reflections in the coming couple of weeks before we meet, and then we'll go from there in 2 weeks. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions or?
Emily, I sent you an email that I was confused about the phrasing of a couple of questions in the homework, but I think that this class has cleared it up. So I think you can disregard the question, and we'll see if I'm clear or not.
Okay, yeah, and then just email me if it's still unclear.
Okay.
I'll try to, help
Great.
there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Emily, I just wanted to let you and everyone know Christian is sick. And so if we could all pray for him and for all people affected by the pandemic, of course, but that would be wonderful.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay. Is he okay? Do you know, or can you say?
Yes, he's recovering at home.
Okay. Good.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's all dedicate for Christian as well while we're here, for him to quickly and completely recover. Okay. So I think this topic is pretty difficult, but hopefully not too much aversion arose when I covered it. Nothing else?
It's time to call my mom.
Yeah.
I'm lucky my mom helps me remember all the good things she does for me constantly. I'm never in the position of having to, remember on my own all the sacrifices she's made for me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hop off. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Me too.
You.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Welcome you,
Thanks,
Michael.
Emily.
Awesome. Thanks,
you.
guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye. Emily, I won't see you next time because I'll be working in the hospital that day. So I'm sorry I'll miss it. But thank you. I think the new microphone sounds really great. I hope it works okay. Let us know if it's going to be okay, and if you need anything else, we're happy to offer it.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. And yeah, no, I mean, I think it is working really, really well.
Yes.
I think like it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I really appreciate the center being willing to support me in that way.
Oh, absolutely. Anything else we can do to support you too? We don't have a lot of expenses right now because we don't have a physical space. So we are happy to contribute. So if there's anything else you need or things that you think would be beneficial, let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and all the best in that week in the hospital.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe and healthy.
Yes,
Oh my goodness.
doing my
Okay.
best. You too. Good to see you. Have a lovely holiday.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.